Hello, hello, and welcome to a new episode of Ramblings from Two Meddling Kids, where we like to review movies. I'm Edward Hunt, one half, joined by my co-host,
Mike Cunningham.
and we are the Meddling Kids. And today we'll be reviewing not The Covenant, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. Important distinction here. All right, for those of you joining us for the first time, we never spoil anything with the first 5 or 10 minutes. We will give you a spoiler-free review from 0 to 5. From 0 to 5, we'll just kind of give you our overall thoughts on the movie. So if you aren't sure whether or not you want to see it, listen to these first 5, 10 minutes, then decide whether or not you want to go. Feel free to go. Just make sure you come back and listen to the rest. Or hey, stay the whole time. I'm not the boss of you. All right, Mike, you ready to get started with our spoiler-free review?
Yes, I am.
All right, what do you think of Guy Ritchie's The Covenant?
Guy Ritchie's I'm gonna gotta stop saying his full name. I'm giving this movie a 4. Just straight out of the gate. I guess I knew what to expect. I mean, they laid it out in the trailer. But I guess I just wasn't expecting how good some of the cinematography was going to be. I think Guy Ritchie really filmed the action very well. Like it really puts you in these scenarios that the soldiers were in, which was engaging. I don't know if that was because we were in a theater. I don't know if a home release will have the same effect. But it was. I know the action was great. The acting was great. The story was compelling. I think Jake Gyllenhaal usually doesn't miss. I know there's been a few here and there, but for the most part, he's really picked great projects to work on. This guy Dar Salim was just incredible. Like I said, I think the biggest draw of this movie was the action scenes. Because I was mentioning, like, I played, you played video games before, like the Call of Duties and all stuff like that. And it felt like that, but like was just a heightened sense of fear, right? Because in a Call of Duty, right, like you can usually take a few hits or you'll gain health or something like that. But imagine Call of Duty where like every hit is, fatal. I think that's what they did with this one because it was just like, like I was saying in the theater, it was just like I remember playing some video game where just like I know I could take a few hits, so I'm very much an army of one.
Yeah.
But with this one, it was just like you see another wave of like soldiers coming. You're like, Jesus Christ! I just
You're like, oh, God.
it was like very much every time. It was like, how are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
And it wasn't as like I mean maybe towards the end it was more cliched, but it was just like definitely in the beginning of the movie, it was just like every time they encountered an enemy, it was very much like, holy shit, how are they going to get out of this? And I think that anxiety and that adrenaline that you got from that really helped, really helped the movie. So yeah, I give it a 4. I thought it was really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also going to give it a 4. We got to stop giving things the same review. No, but I also thought it was really good. I'm going to talk about my drawbacks first. My only real drawback was some of the dialogue, really. And I guess maybe like the story was simple, but it was but whatever. But the dialogue, some of the more Shakespearean-esque dialogue at times that Jake Gyllenhaal delivered, I felt was like, I don't know how I feel about this. It kind of took me out of it a little bit. But as a whole, like as Mike said, the action sequences were great. Yeah, it felt very realistic. I think, with all of that, I was like, I obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I've never been in the army. I've never gone on a tour of duty, but just seeing a lot of these interactions from like soldier to soldier and maybe like soldier to like civilian felt like, okay, no, this is probably how it really was. And there was that sense of realism to it. Combine that with like phenomenal cinematography. Jake Gyllenhaal was great. Jake Gyllenhaal was very good. I think the dialogue took me out, but I don't think that's really because of him. I think that's more the dialogue itself, not his acting. But Dar Salim was fucking phenomenal. I thought he, blew it away. I thought he stole the show. So that was really cool. And yeah, as a whole, I just was watching this. I was like, wow, this is a very powerful movie. And the score and other parts, which we'll talk about as we go along, when stuff is happening and they're playing this score of like this like old, more like I guess Irish violins of sorts, and set in a movie in Afghanistan, I was like, oh man, all hope is lost. I was like, well, all hope is lost. Pack it up, everybody. Everyone's gonna die. We're screwed here. Damn. And like I felt that watching the movie. And yeah, the plot was simple. I mean, but it was very straightforward of like, this happens, I'm tortured, this happens, right? It's like bang, bang, bang. But as a whole, really enjoyed the movie. Yeah, solid 4 out of 5. So yeah. So I'd say from there, everybody, if you haven't seen this movie yet, Mike and I are saying, hey, you should probably go see it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd say like, yeah, 100%. It's just nothing wrong with it. I'd say great in theaters. If you do want to wait, it's not going to be the end of the world. However, solid movie, worth the trip to the theaters, at least based on what we're saying. So cool. So now what we always like to do is give a little background. So this movie takes place in a very far off mystical land that we've never heard of before. That's a joke. Sorry, everybody.
Oh my God. It was too early for comedy, apparently.
Sorry, it's early on our end. Yeah, sorry about that. Obviously, it does not. Mike, where does this movie take place? Give us some background on it, please.
Well, okay, so the Guy Ritchie, The Covenant, directed obviously by Guy Ritchie. The runtime is 2 hours and 3 minutes, which I think it did kind of drag. I think my only talking about like your drawbacks from it, I didn't mind the Shakespearean, some of the monologues from Jake Gyllenhaal, but
Yeah,
what I will say is some of the flashback scenes or like kind of the slow motion seem kind of drawn out at times.
fair. Yeah.
But yeah, so the runtime could have been maybe like 10, 15 minutes shorter, in my opinion.
Especially with like this fact that the story was kind of really simple. I guess yeah, having such like a long runtime just kind of adds like, yeah, okay, we get what's really going on here. You're just kind of
Yeah.
padding it. No, I hear that.
So the release date was April 21st, 2023. The budget was 55 million. The box
Okay.
office is the first time, well, one of the few times we get to do this because we're recording a little bit later. It finished third behind Super Mario Brothers and Evil Dead Rise this
Okay.
weekend with a modest 6.2 million.
Mm.
So not terrible, but I mean, this is a very I don't know how often people go to see war movies anymore, and especially with this subject.
Hmm.
But once, like I said, I think this one, it was still really good, and also it was going up against the juggernaut that currently is Super Mario, and
Super
the new,
Mario
and
Brothers.
then the new Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah.
So a modest box office return for the first weekend. Rotten Tomato shit, I didn't look that up, but I think it was at like a 94 or something like that. It seemed really high, a 90,
Okay.
maybe 81, 94, something like that. And then the genre is action thriller, which I think it delivered on both of those.
For sure.
Starring Jake Gyllenhaal as John Kinley, Dar Salim as Ahmed, Alexander Ludwig as Declan Brady, Anthony Starr as Eddie Parker. Most people know Anthony Starr as Homelander from The Boys.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Emily Beecham as Caroline Kinley, and John Lee Miller as Colonel Vokes. So it's a fairly, I guess, small. I guess not small cast, but it was just like the main players. There weren't too many. So because you're just mainly just following Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim's characters through
Yeah.
the desert.
Yeah, for a solid like third of that movie, this is what you're doing. You're watching both of them go through the desert. Yeah.
This is a nice little. So like, Guy Ritchie has had a nice little run in the past few
Hmm.
years. So he had The Gentleman in 2019. I think Wrath of Man a year later, and this year he had two. I think the Operation Fortune, which we talked about with April Ludgate and Jason Statham, that came out. But I mean that one was cool. It had like Hugh Grant and Josh Hartnett as well. But so he's kind of my favorite director for the past few years. So it was nice to see him deliver, and he's literally been doing I kind of really stretching. I guess it's mainly those first three were more crime,
Hmm.
and this is really kind of out of his wheelhouse, which was nice.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I,
the information I have.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's definitely with Guy Ritchie. I mean, it's like what Snatch. I'm
Lock,
blanking
stock,
at Lock, Stock. Yeah, Lock, Stock. So he was typecasted a little bit for sure. I think not in a bad way because all those movies are great. But that was like these are the movies he makes. So then to see him kind of make this movie, and I was like, Oh, okay, Guy Ritchie. Like this is very different than like other
Hmm.
movies that you've made, but really, really good. Granted, he also did like Sherlock Holmes too, right? The Robert Downey
And
Jr. role.
Aladdin, so yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, so he has definitely gotten out of it. But with like before this, when I thought Guy Ritchie, I thought
The
Snatch and
crime dramas,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly the crime drama. So to see him
especially
go,
set in London and like the
Mhm.
London crime,
Yeah, exactly, or somewhere in the UK. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah. So thank you, Mike, for the background. So now, before we get into some of our play-by-play of the movie, so spoilers are coming up. If you are still here and don't want anything spoiled, don't blame me if you stay. Quick word from our sponsors. Just Be, aka me. My name is Edward Hunt. I'm on the Just Be team of Compass in the DMV. That's DC, Maryland, Virginia. So if you want any advice or need anything home related in the DMV, feel free to reach out to me anytime. That is, you need contractors, a good lender to refinance, or you just want advice on the market in general, please feel free to ask me any questions. Also, since Compass is a nationwide brokerage, even if you're not in DC, Maryland, or Virginia, say, let's pick New Mexico today. If you're in New Mexico and you need an agent, feel free to reach out and I can find you a phenomenal Compass agent who'll be able to help you through everything that you need. Also, things should be coming out shortly of another fun little Kickstarter project that I've been working on. Not yet. I still need to get a video editor for it, but I'd say in the next week or two. But cool. Awesome, everybody. Thank you so much. And let's get started with our play-by-play. So where does this movie open? What's going on in this? I'm confused.
Um, I can see that you're a teacher because there's very child. I don't know what's going on. I don't care. All right, let me like one question at a time, please. So there's opening text as it. I think that it's a camera pans over the desert landscape, and there's
Hmm.
opening text about shortly after the attacks on September 11th, American troops were deployed to Afghanistan, and around the same time, the American Army, the U.S. Army, recruited and hired interpreters from Afghanistan to kind of help the American troops, kind of navigate the lands and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And before joining the American Army, they were promised special visas. So I think that's the main background. And then you jump to March 2018, and you meet John Kinley, played by, like we said, Jake Gyllenhaal, and his team. I think they had a 33rd Regiment or something like that. I just remember seeing 33
Potentially,
on
yeah.
the yeah. So
I don't fully remember that. Yeah, some of the more finer military details I kind of just glossed over. I'm not gonna like I get
I
it.
think it's because of the fact that like my dad was in the Navy and for a bit that
Mhm.
was my dream to
Okay.
be in the military. So like certain things like that sometimes I do notice.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so his troop, I guess I'll call them. You meet the different members of his troop. They are at a checkpoint in Afghanistan, and
Hmm.
his group's job is to look for IEDs, which are improvised explosive devices. Um, and so he has his group and then an interpreter as well, a part of his group. And so they're at the checkpoint. His interpreter and one of his soldiers are at a truck that stopped, and the interpreter is talking to the guy driving the truck, and he's saying, "Oh, you're a traitor," and
Hmm.
you get kind of a back and forth between them in their language. And I think the interpreter is being very calm. Like the guy's like spitting, spewing um, hate at him because of the fact that he's working with the Americans, and he's just simply asking, can you get out of the truck? What do you have in the back and stuff like that? So like the guy stops the truck, and they go to the back of the truck and they ask him to open it, and he starts to sort of back away.
Yeah.
And this is when you
Real
see
sketchy,
like
real
John get a little bit, wary, like what's going on, because the rest of the troop is just kind of talking about what they're going to do, for the rest of the day. You can tell that they realize that their job is important, but they also like are kind of bored in a way,
fast.
right? They feel like they're being underused. So it's like you can definitely see this kind of nonchalance to the other soldiers near John. They're cracking jokes and stuff like that, but they're not really paying attention. But John does get alerted to when the interpreter and one of his soldiers have to go behind the truck to check, the contents, and the driver of the truck starts backing away from it, and then as soon as he's kind of clear, the truck explodes, and
Yeah.
the interpreter and that soldier are killed. So shortly after, we meet John and his team on the base, and they're getting another soldier,
Weird.
another.
Quick pause. So with
Yes.
that, of just kind of like that entire like opening scene, I think like it does a great job of just going in and be like, cool, you're thrust right into what this
Hmm.
world and lifestyle is like, and like exactly as you said, Mike, of like, I'm not 100% if I'd say like bored as much as if they're just like very calm. They're like, yep, this is another day of like we're at this checkpoint, we're checking stuff as they go
Hmm.
through.
Yeah.
So they're definitely there is that nonchalance about it for sure.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe not. Yeah, bored was maybe the wrong
yeah.
word to use. Very nonchalant. Like, this is just another day.
Yep, this is another day. Yo, chow chow, do you have food? Oh, blah, 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 it's going. But then, yeah, as soon as anything starts kind of going down, Sergeant John, so Jake Gyllenhaal's character, he's like, whoa, whoa, okay, shit, what's going on here real quick? And then even like with that, and I don't want to get political on this because that's way above my pay grade, but but the difference of seeing someone who is well, obviously we know the truck blows up, so clearly he's involved with the Taliban or involved with like more radical groups in Afghanistan versus the interpreter, who's also another person that lives in
Hmm.
Afghanistan. To see that clash right there in the beginning, you're hit with like, oh, okay, this really made like an us and them situation, even of like the people of Afghanistan, of like
Yeah.
the interpreters are seen. Granted, like, and it goes throughout the entire movie. Of like, there's a lot of people in Afghanistan who hate on the Taliban, and then I
Yeah.
think it's for the most part it's the people in the Taliban who are hating on the interpreters. But there's a lot of like butting of heads from the two different ideologies of the people, and it's like it was illustrated very well here. So like it's
I definitely agree because obviously when 9/11 happened, I was a preteen. Like,
yeah,
I wasn't really paying attention to global politics or anything like that. And so it wasn't something that I was really aware of. So I think for a very uninformed American like myself, I just
hmm
assumed that we were all the Afghanistan people were the Taliban, just kind of generalizing
yeah,
and not really looking
hmm
into it. So I think you're right. It did really illustrate that the Taliban was a small faction of
yes,
people in Afghanistan. It was not all of them, and
hmm
I think it really helped shape the story of the movie, but also just shape my mindset on what was happening at that time. Because, like I said, I was too young to really lean into it or really pay attention. That was big people stuff.
yeah.
So I think yeah, you're right. It did a really good job of explaining the difference between the people that lived there.
Yeah, and this was even like because I think now did they say set in 2018 before this scene or before the next scene? I think it was like
2008, right before this scene.
yeah. So then this is even like 2018. So 9/11 was 2001. This is 17 years later. You still have this stuff going on, and then with what happened in 2021, well, which was mentioned at the end of the movie, like there's
Hmm.
definitely a very big thing here. But I think that's a great example of what you just said of like so much got simplified to, oh, all the people in Afghanistan are the bad guys. And like 9/11 happened when I was in third grade, and that was definitely kind of the narrative. Well, it wasn't like it was there's a lot of bad guys over there. We got to stop them. We got to save her. But there's so much
Hmm.
more in this, not microcosm, macrocosm of this country going on behind the scenes that I think was illustrated pretty well just in that quick like you're like the guy in the Taliban, you're a traitor, what are you doing? Interpreter, okay, sir, I'm just trying to like help this because he's trying to do right by his family, and also like there's a lot of other issues that happen for sure. So
Yeah.
that's all I really want to get in politically. But so we're back to the base. So unfortunately, Jack and the interpreter blew up last time we saw, and then we're back at the base.
Yes. So, yeah, we're back at the base. Maybe a few days later. I don't know. Time is very.
Hmm
They weren't really specific, but they're getting a replacement soldier for Jack, and then John is also recruiting a new interpreter for
hmm
them, and this is where you first meet Ahmed,
hmm
um, because the guy who's like the recruiter or whatever is saying like he knows a bunch of languages and he knows the locals and stuff like that. So John calls Ahmed over and immediately gets his name wrong. He calls him
hmm
Ahmed.
Yeah.
Um, and then they have it. I think this exchange was like really cool. Like where he was just like, what did you do before you joined the army? Because I think Ahmed, when I was
hmm
messing it up, Ahmed had been in the army for maybe like 5 years or something like that. He was saying,
Yeah.
and before that he was an engineer
hmm
or a mechanic, either one. But he was saying how if it has an engine, I can work on it. So like
Yeah.
John, quickly he's sitting in a truck and he says, so what is that pointing to something in the engine?
Mm-hmm.
And Ahmed just goes, "Well, that's an engine, sir." Basically, the equivalent of, "Are you giving me lip, boy?" Like,
Yeah.
but it was like a kind of this showing that he does like Ahmed does respect the fact that he's in the army and he is a he's a soldier. There's a hierarchy there, but he's definitely there's a personality there.
Yes.
Um,
He's got a strong
and so I
personality.
think this exchange definitely warms John to him. So he lets him know initially what they do. They search for IEDs. So like, and obviously you're replacing somebody who passed away. So obviously we do get into the shit a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little rough and dangerous. And Ahmed says he understands. And so John introduces both the new recruit and the new interpreter to the team. Um, and then we're immediately in kind of another scene of what that the 33rd, I think it's 33B or something like that. But
Sure.
what they do. So they just like they walk through the city based on certain intel and they're checking for, I guess, munitions hubs for IEDs and armories for the Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're walking through the city, and you get more of the exchange like through the soldiers, where it's just very nonchalant, even though they are in a war zone and it can be very dangerous. They're kind of really just focused on, what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go to it looks like a warehouse, and Ahmed immediately says, "It was like this, you're not going to find anything here, right?" He
Yeah.
was just like, I know this city, and that stuff, but
He's a
John
man
just,
about town.
being yeah, yeah, exactly. John just, being a sergeant, just goes, tells them to knock on the door. The guy comes, and Ahmed is immediately talking to him, basically just saying like they're gonna come in.
Mm-hmm.
It just as long as you just let them come in, this will be peaceful and quick. And even the guy is like, I fully understand, and this is what you were saying about like even the people in the town that aren't a part of the Taliban are against the Taliban. So he says, "No, I'm not. Yeah, we don't do anything with the Taliban. We don't like them."
Yeah.
But Ahmed just, reassures him. It was just like it's going to be some because Ahmed knows exactly what that place is.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and so, but still, so like the guy lets them in, and you just like they scan it, everything's clear, and you just find I think it's like just an opium den or something like that, or just like
Yeah.
people
Pretty
are
sure.
just yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say yeah, opium den or like hookah. Yeah, which is they all
Yeah.
have like there's a bunch of hookahs everywhere. So I don't
Mhm.
know the proper way of smoking opium and other random things. Like there was heroin later, but it was like leaves. I was like, is that really heroin? But then again, I have no idea. So if it could be, fuck it. But either
But
way, this was a drug den of some sort. But like I guess
yeah,
I don't know if it's legal or not. Like soldiers don't give a fuck. It
yeah,
was fun.
exactly. Really, that's not what they're there to do. So it's just like they're not the police of these
Yeah.
people, right? And so initially, John is like, "All right, so I'm gonna stay here."
So he's like, I'm
You
gonna
got,
stay here and smoke up, and
and then he decides against it. And then so they leave, and then John goes to his one of his superiors, the Colonel Vokes that we talked about
Mhm.
earlier, kind of saying that not that he's feeling underused. It was just like he kind of feels hogtied, and the
Yeah.
method that they have to go about um, finding these IEDs. It was like if you let me, kind of do it my way, we get results.
Hmm.
And then the colonel goes, I mean, I don't care, how you get it done. Just kind of either get it done or don't type of thing.
But we never had
Kind
this
of
conversation. Like,
yeah, kind of giving him the okay, and then John meets with another sergeant, Sergeant Declan,
hmm
and they have once again this another exchange between soldiers, and Declan gives him some more intel. So just like these printouts of possible suspects from the Taliban,
yeah.
and so John immediately takes. Sorry, go ahead.
What was it with all of this too? And then even like with like, and this was of the realism. And again, I'm not a soldier. I've never done a tour, but I truly, from like interacting, like I have family in military, I have friends in military. Interacting with them, I'm like, oh, this is 100% how they talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just a lot more PG because it's a lot more of like, oh, buy me dinner first, then we'll talk about this. When they probably might use a little bit more explicit language, but even as a whole of like the military guys like joking with one another about dumb stuff and it's like like oh you never think of me first and blah 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 like very like casually throwing out like jokes about everything is very funny or even like when John at the opium den he was like hey chow chow keep that pipe out your mouth just like there is
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff going on but I think it's if you're in such a stressful situation you need to keep that sense of humor up so I think that's how they need to interact with one another for sure but yeah so really just of that And even like with the colonel being like, "Hey, we never had this conversation. Like, just get the results done. We never had this conversation, so I don't want to hear about it." And then keep it moving. I'm like, "Yep, that seems pretty spot on."
Yeah. So he takes the information that Declan gives him and goes straight to Ahmed and says, "Do you recognize any of these men, or this man specifically?"
Hmm.
And Ahmed says he does. So like that night, they go back into the city, disguised, and they find the guy. Uh, uh, I guess abduct him
Hmm.
and take him to get interrogated.
Yeah.
Um, and so basically, they just want information about where the Taliban is uh, munitions hubs are. And so initially, like, Ahmed is having a conversation with the this suspect, and just like the exchange earlier at the checkpoint, you do see like he's obviously a member of the Taliban, and he's cursing at the interpreter for being a part, working with the United States military. He's saying that I'm going to kill your family, and I'm going to kill you, and just all these threats. And you see the calm and cool, collected sides of Ahmed, where he's like not interpreting
Hmm.
everything back. I think that's what was interesting too. He said that earlier. It was just like, I'm not a translator, I'm an interpreter,
Yeah.
right? Translator is just going to give you, word for word what was said, but I think he's just kind of taking everything that's said and relaying the information of what how he conveyed it, which was interesting. I kind of like that distinction
Yeah, and just the
between the two.
browbeating he's getting from this dude, where it's like, I'm gonna kill you in front of your family, but don't worry, I'll immediately set the dogs on your wife afterwards. I'm like,
Hmm.
Jesus,
Yeah,
like that was true. I was like, oh, I felt a little uncomfortable. I was like, and it was
yeah.
meant to make you feel that way, but I was like, oh man, oof, okay, that's rough. Yeah,
But so they, Bravo said like they'll give you X amount of money.
hmm,
We just need information. And
yeah,
initially he's hesitant. So they give him some money, and he says, I might know a little something. And then like
hmm,
so this is where uh, you get the clash between John and Ahmed, where
hmm,
Ahmed is saying like, oh, he wants more money, and then
yeah,
he'll tell us. And then John says, no, 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 he'll get the money after we confirm that the intel is good.
yeah,
But I think Ahmed even tells John, he's like, it'll be easy if you just give him the money.
hmm,
John pushes back, but Ahmed kind of, does it, calls an audible and gives the guy more money, and they give the information.
yeah,
Um, and as when they get back to the base, you see John talk to one, I guess his second in command,
Eddie,
because he
yeah,
also speaks the language, which is interesting.
hmm, yeah.
Seems like,
Yeah,
but he
Eddie
says,
knew everything that
well,
was happening, but he can't be the Eddie can't be the interpreter because he's also wearing like I guess I don't know. I guess maybe he really could be technically, but either way, he's not a local.
yeah, I
So
thought it was interesting, but anyway, so it's just like obviously there's someone in John's troop that can also speak the language,
hmm,
or at least get it interpreted a bit. So John asked his second in command like what was being said, and he lets him know that the guy was threatening Ahmed's family, and that they
hmm,
also had done a background check and found out that Ahmed, before working with the United States government, he was like working in drugs with his brother
yeah,
until the Taliban killed his son. And
yeah,
so like there's a bit of a there's obviously a vendetta against the Taliban on the side of Ahmed. And so John goes to talk to Ahmed and says, one kind of chastising him for going against what they had agreed on during the
hmm,
interrogation. Um, but and then that's where you get that exchange from Ahmed. So he was like, "I'm not a translator, I'm an interpreter." And
yeah,
I think it's very interesting too, right? It was one of those things where, like I said earlier, like the military obviously has hierarchy, and like you're supposed to
hmm,
stay in your place. But I think Ahmed is towing those lines where like you also have me here for a reason. So
yeah.
I'm not gonna stay silent in these moments or whatever,
And there
which
is like a little bit too of like military with being like a little arrogant almost of being like, no, we know the right way to do this, and you're like, no, well,
yeah,
I mean, like the man does know the town very well, and he knows kind of
yeah,
everything. It would help, it would behoove you a little bit to listen, to what the man has to say, but military did not, and I think. Yeah, yeah, we don't need to get into anything political, but yeah, I think that was like when stuff got pulled out. I was just listening to a lot of things, and I was like, okay, we just got to learn from everything that happened in Afghanistan when we had to pull out. But I digress.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the intel that they got from the interrogation, they find that there's two locations of the Taliban's munitions hubs. So the next morning, John first he tells Colonel Vokes what they're going to be doing, and then when they're on the base, they're standing on the base, kind of like strategizing the route to take and how to go. And they have another. I don't know if he's an interpreter, maybe he's just like a scout from Afghanistan,
So he might
but
have been I think he was like an Afghanistan soldier. So like there was like you had the U.S. soldiers that were there in Afghanistan, and they also had like the local military there too. That like the U.S. soldiers were also training Afghanistan soldiers who were against the Taliban and for the new, I guess, democracy of Afghanistan. I think it was a democracy. Again, I don't fully know all of the details, but so he was like a local soldier for sure. That was like was also in the operation. I'm pretty sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's telling them that the best route to take would be this way because the roads are flooded or something like that. And they're like, okay, cool. So they set out, and when they get to this kind of fork on the road where there's the guy suggested to take the right way instead of the left, Ahmed kind of once again steps up and says, stop the truck. We need to stop the truck. We need to talk.
Yeah.
And he tells John that there's something fishy about the intel that the guy gave, because once again he is also a local. He knows this area. And he's saying like, the rains wouldn't have flooded out that way. It sounds like he's leading us into a trap and into an ambush.
Yeah.
And John just like once again I think it's interesting, like talking about the arrogance of the the U.S. military was just like we know what we're doing type of thing.
Yeah. Like, this man's been vetted. We know what we're doing. What are you talking about? That's crazy. And Ahmed's like, yo, hey, bad idea. Yeah.
And so I think John still takes his warning into, so they get the guy to do an aerial, get an aerial shot of the area, and also he has two of the soldiers kind of like scope it out using like binoculars and stuff like that. And then while this is going on, Ahmed goes to talk to the soldier, the Afghani soldier.
Yeah.
And you see he's attacked him, and he has he's attacked him, and he has him like on the ground with a gun pointed to his chest, to his face.
Yeah,
and
he's
just saying,
dug right in there in his jaw.
Yeah. And he's like, this guy is lying. He's leading us to to an ambush. And I think John is like, back down. I'm not going to tell you again. So like, there's just this standoff. And he says that the guy says that they have my family type of thing like that. And then at the same time, the guy who's getting an aerial shot says, "Oh, there's definitely some movement out there, kind of set up for an ambush, right?" So John does take Ahmed's gun, but they go back to the trucks and they decide to turn around and go back to the base.
Yeah.
And then that night, you see John on a Skype call with his family. So he has a wife and two kids. I believe a son and a daughter. So he talks to them. And I think it was a nice parallel. You see John talking to his family, and Ahmed goes home to his family, and his wife is pregnant. And
super pregnant. She's like ready to pop. Yeah, like she is just like, I'd say within days, like that child is coming. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the next day, they moved to go to raid the second munitions hub, which is about they said it's 300 clicks away, so it's about like 3 hours.
Yeah, I think 300 clicks would be like 300 kilometers.
Yeah,
right? Clicking a kilometer is the same. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like it's 3 hours away, and so they set out.
Yeah.
And I think they get to a mine or something like that, and there's a few guys there, so like they draw their weapons on the guys to ask them what they're doing there. And the main guy that they're talking to, he was like, "Oh, the Taliban, oh, we hate them. Like but this is you're in the wrong spot."
He's just like, "Oh, they're very bad. They're over there though. Now, not here. Yeah. They are over there." And I was like, "That'd be sketchy, no matter how you phrase that, my friend."
And so while this guy is telling him where that Taliban are at some other location, you see a guy in I guess a shipping container that's there, and he's calling the Taliban higher ups, and he's like, the Americans found the mine, and so the guy's like, oh, we're gonna send more troops.
Yeah.
And so John, I think, like you said, he's very suspicious of this guy. So like I think they kind of not locked them up, but like tie their hands or something like that, and then like go to
Yeah, it was as
yeah.
soon as they found the dude on his phone. It was like, before they're like, hey, everyone just right here, we'll talk to you. And as soon as they found a dude on his phone, they're like, oh shit. So then they're like, all right, they got to tie everyone's hand behind the back. So that way to try and like stop it. And they're like, okay, we need to look. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have the sniper up there, like surveying the land just in case somebody comes, and then you have John, Ahmed, and I think his second in command, kind of
His name
searching
was
throughout the.
Yeah. Well, his name's also Eddie. I realized this. So there's Eddie, who's
Eddie?
like, Anthony
Okay.
Starr, but then there's the other Eddie too. So there are two Eddies in this movie, which, hey,
Okay.
Edward's a
Well, I
very
guess
nice.
they did call Eddie just Parker by his last name.
Fair. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so Eddie, John, and Ahmed are searching through this site, and they stumble upon one. So one group stumbles upon like a bunch of guns. Eddie, John, and Ahmed find the IEDs
Yeah.
in this kind of in another, not a warehouse, but another kind of this house or hut, something like that. And
And
then
they
they
found
also
like
see.
yeah. Oh, sorry, sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah,
and
you.
yeah. They also see some Taliban members filming something where like I think they've tortured some guy,
Yeah.
and they're filming it or whatever. So like they immediately go in, they shoot everybody, and then they also notice that one of the guys there was the driver of the truck from the checkpoint that had set off the bomb at the checkpoint. So they immediately kill him.
Yeah.
But since they're not paying attention, another guy bursts out of the back of the room and shoots Eddie.
Yep.
So he's a little bit, I think they shot him in the shoulder or something.
He's like
I
winged.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they take that guy out. And they set up bomb for the IDs for about like 3 minutes or something like that, and then they kind of go to leave. And this is when the sniper realizes that there's backups or reinforcements coming.
Yeah.
And so the team gets ambushed, and once again, it's just a very intense action scene, and it puts you right there,
Yeah.
like because I think it's refreshing when you know that the stakes of for these characters, right? I think we watch so many movies currently in Hollywood where there's so much plot armor for characters where they're not going to die or something like that, so it doesn't. There's no fear there. He's like,
Yeah.
they'll be fine. But I think in this movie, it was like, oh no. Now I think because of the trailers, kind of who's safe, but it was just like everybody else. It was like you're not really sure, and so I think that's what. And then also he just filmed great action set pieces. So like,
Yeah.
you see as the members are fighting off the approaching Taliban soldiers, and so one by one they each get gunned down or and some gunned down, and the only ones that are able to escape are John and Ahmed in a truck,
Yeah.
and
And with
then
that too, just for the whole scene was just the score, and that's what I mentioned in the spoiler for review part. But yeah, but like that score while this is going on, it's like it's like violin and like more like classical kind of more, and it sounds more like I guess UK. So I don't know if it's like Irish or what this sound really is, but like while that's going on, while all the soldiers are dying, it's like I was like, oh man, yeah, I'm just like filled with this sense of hopelessness. Watch in a good way. Like it wasn't like oh no, it's like in a good way. I was like drawn in. I was like oh no, this is really bad. And like everyone's just dying left and right, and you're just like holy crap. So like the action scenes, as you said, filmed with that score, juxtaposed on top. It was a great scene. It was a great, super stressful, very well executed scene. So yeah, right here. Yeah.
And so excuse me, Ahmed and John drive off in a truck, but slowly, the tire gets blown out, so they have to go on foot, and they're just
Yeah.
running through the desert. Well, not I guess desert, but more, yeah, I guess desert, wilderness, whatever it is. Um,
Yeah. Mountainy
and
terrain.
the Taliban is, chasing after them because they call up to the higher ups from the Taliban and they said, oh, we need all of them need to, be found and killed.
Well, they've
And
got to
then
be
at the
captured alive. And like I think it's
yeah,
done so great here, where like they had it, and like because you look at like okay, why do you need to like because the Taliban, unfortunately, and like everyone, I guess I don't fucking know, whatever, but people torture people, and it sucks, and it's a
yeah,
very terrible thing. But you had just seen the Taliban torturing that guy, so then when like the leader of the Taliban, who they call back to, they're like, oh, I want them alive. You're like, oh fuck, that even just raises the stakes because like not only
hmm
he wants them alive, but he's going to torture him just like they were torturing that guy.
yeah,
Like that was just the immediate like, oh, that's going to be oh. So like, for me, that just raised the stakes immediately too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so quickly you do see that because they had called back up before, well, like as soon as they found the confirmed that this was an IED, like where they were building them. And so
Hmm.
like they did, luckily for John's team, they did blow up the IEDs at the site. And then shortly after John and Ahmed escaped, you do see reinforcements come in a helicopter to take out the
Hmm.
remaining Taliban soldiers, and they collect the bodies. And you do see one soldier say that everybody from the 33rd is here except for the sergeant and the interpreter.
Yeah.
So the U.S. Army is aware that they're still out there. They don't know if they're alive or dead, but they are aware that their bodies
Hmm.
haven't been recovered. So at the same time, you see John and Ahmed fleeing in this kind of forest in the desert ish,
So you're
and
saying that the American soldiers couldn't have used those nice helicopters to look for John and Ahmed? Just out of
I mean,
curiosity, you
it's
know?
a lot of desert, guy.
There's a lot of there's a lot of helicopters and they got a lot of satellite
That's
imagery.
bringing in the Eagles from the Lord of the Rings again. Like I don't want to get into it.
Yo, movie needs to movie. This was like, movie needs to movie. But I'm like, oh man, come on, like, because with how realistic other parts are, I'm like, please tell me that if this was the case, you would do like a couple laps with a helicopter just to check. Come on, guy. Yeah, but anyway.
But so they get away from the Taliban. I think with the help of the U.S. The reinforcements coming from the U.S. military, they get away from for a bit. And John sits down and says, I think we're good for now. And
Yeah.
you just see. I think this was a great scene too. We're just talking about the acting between both actors. So obviously John had just lost his entire troop, and he's gotten away with his life. So he's very emotional, and he's
Yeah.
just kind of sitting, with his back to Ahmed, just staring into staring kind of into nothingness, really like thinking
Hmm.
of and contemplating what to do next, and about what just happened. And I think it was a very important scene because you see Ahmed wanting to say something but not knowing what to say,
Yes.
wanting to reach out but not knowing what was the right thing to do. And it was just like this very powerful scene. No
Hmm.
words are said, but just the emotion between both of them, because it's like obviously they both just survived something.
Yeah.
um, and it was just like all those emotions come over them and they don't know how to. Well, actually, I think more Ahmed, he doesn't know how to comfort John or
Hmm.
anything like that, so he just kind of, he wants to but he doesn't.
Yeah.
I thought that was like just a very great scene.
Hmm.
And then like talking about earlier how they're soldiers, so this is even though this crazy thing just happened, this is just another day. So John kind of like, he has that moment and immediately was like, okay, I think we can rest here or something
Yeah.
like that. He's already come up with a plan, like how are we gonna move after this. Um, and so they rest there for the night. And then in the morning, John says, we're X amount of, or I think he was like, they were 100 clicks away or something like that from the base.
Something. Yeah.
Um, and so they needed to, but they needed to move because the Taliban was on them.
Yeah.
And so you do see that recruits have come to search for them. And this was another intense scene because once again, the state, like you said, now that you know the state, we
Hmm.
know the stakes from the Taliban. They want them alive to torture them. You know how far away they are from home. They don't have backup or anything like that. So like the stakes are very high.
Yeah.
And then so you see certain exchanges where like they can't use they have guns. Oh, this is a one funny scene, even though it was intense. But
Hmm.
like John gives Ahmed an AK-47 or something like that because
Yeah.
he, like I said in the earlier scene, he had taken his gun from him because he had
Hmm.
attacked the other soldier. So he gives him an AK-47, and they're running from the Taliban. They fall down some hill, And then John goes, "Where's your gun?" And he says, "Somewhere at the top of the hill." And I'm just like, this.
Yeah, I'm like, come on. Yeah.
And so he gives gives him a handgun or whatever. But once again, they can't even use these guns just yet
Hmm.
because any gunfire will alert the Taliban to their location. So like you do see them take out a few more soldiers. Sorry,
They probably take out
using
their shoulders
hand.
too. Yeah. You take out a soldier, their shoulder's done. All right, yeah, just two for
Uh,
one.
they take out a few soldiers and to get more ammo and guns,
Hmm.
and then are able to escape, evade capture again, and they get to this abandoned house in the middle
Yeah,
of the desert. Which even I was just like, I feel like they're gonna find you, my guy.
yeah,
Like
that doesn't
let's
seem like
keep.
maybe the best
I
idea.
know they're tired or whatever, but it was like let's just keep moving. The
Yeah.
more distance you get, between. But so they stop at the house for a bit and they rest. And then, also, since they were taking out soldiers, they got weapons and
Mm.
ammunition, and they also got a radio from one of the from one of the soldiers. So, like at some point the next day, they notice that they're getting reception from the walkie-talkie or from the radio.
Hmm.
And obviously, if they're getting that reception, if they can hear them, then that they're pretty close. And they mention that they see a house, and like John goes, "Well, there weren't too many of those around here, so like we
Yeah.
need we need to move." And so John is like looking out, and it was like this is I think talking about the score again. We're just like
Hmm.
I've seen movies. I was like, oh, something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so like as he's like surveying the house to see if they're around, he gets shot
Hmm.
once, and then I think he's like, it was. I guess it's a fight or flight response where he just immediately starts firing into the air
Yeah.
without like actually seeing. Well, once again, I've never been shot, so I'm not gonna judge somebody's how they react to it. But it was like
He's
immediately
trying
just
to
starts
sound cover
firing into
fire,
the
of
air.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he gets hit again. I think he gets hit in the arm and somewhere in the arm and then in the leg.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
down, and then you see the three Taliban soldiers swarm him. Um, and like so they're dragging him away, and one guy's like very, very like just upset. I think it's because they killed, one of his friends or some like a family member or something like that.
Yeah.
He's just
He
very
wants. Yeah.
upset.
He
So
wants
like
to kill him.
yeah, he was like and he's saying he must die, and then his fellow soldiers are just like that the bosses want them alive.
Yeah.
And so he, uh, I guess not pistol whips, but he hits John in the head with the butt of his machine gun. And this was an interesting scene too, where we're just like talking about the score, where as soon as he hits John in the head, like the movie goes silent, and you kind of
Yeah.
get John's reaction to it. We're just like he's obviously a bit concussed, his head starts bleeding a bit,
Hmm. And
and so
the
they're
music
dragging him
starts
away.
right as the blood goes down. Like that was like as soon as like it was
Yeah, yeah.
silent, and then as soon as the blood trickles down, like it's like a harp of like doo 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 doo. You know what I mean? With like the blood going down. I'm like that was well done too. I was like okay, good, nice job, editors. Yeah.
Yes. So they're dragging John away, and immediately you see them taken out by Ahmed,
Hmm.
and he realizes that John's hurt or whatever, and he says we're going home,
Yeah.
and he's like we can't they're searching for us, so we can't take the main roads. He changes into I think one of the robes or something like that that the Taliban were wearing. To
Hmm.
cover up his military uniform, which is frustrated me because I was just like, "Well, take it all off, not just some of it,"
Yeah.
you know. Um, and he builds like kind of this makeshift raft so he can carry John through the desert. And this
Hmm.
is a majority of the movie. This is the big part of I think the whole draw to it, where Ahmed is literally just carrying John through the Afghanistan desert.
Yeah.
Um, and so they get to one place. Obviously they have to hide from when the Taliban scouts are around.
Hmm.
They get to one place. He uses the money that John has in his pack to buy a car. So obviously they can get a little bit further, and then I
Hmm.
think once that runs out of gas, or he realizes that John needs medicine or something like that, he's not going to make it. So they find kind of these guys in an outpost, and this is another instance where you get the locals being not agreeing with the Taliban. So
Hmm.
he talks to the guys, And obviously, like there's a bounty on both their heads, so like people are searching for them.
Yeah.
And he shows this one guy who's like, this is, my friend is really sick. He needs drugs or whatever. And he shows the guy that it's John, obviously this American soldier. And he goes, you're who they're looking for. And then he immediately says, well, we hate the Taliban, so I'll help you. So he trades the truck for a cart and some drugs. And was it heroin or opium? I thought it was opium.
So he said that he was really in the heroin game. Ahmed said
Well,
that
his brother,
his
was, but
brother
it
was
was like I
heroin.
wasn't sure if the drugs he got for John
Yeah.
during the but anyway, he
Yeah,
gets
because
drugs to
opium
help
is heroin.
John.
You just refine it more, right? There's like poppy seeds, opium, refine the opium gives you heroin. Do something with the heroin, it gives you, I don't fucking know, whatever. Yeah,
Okay, got it.
drugs are bad. All right.
Clearly, you didn't listen to Biggie's "The 10 Crack Commandments."
Yeah, all right. In fifth grade, when they gave us all this information with Dare, they were like, "Hey kids, drugs are bad. This is how you get drugs and how you make drugs in your basement at home. Don't do them." And I'm like, "All right,
Don't do it. You're just taking notes, like, all right, all
all
right.
right, all right."
But so he trades the car for a cart and drugs, and this is you see more of his determination and resilience. He's like, because they have to use the mountain passes. To get to, so there's one scene where he's pushing the cart up a hill, and he can't do it anymore. But he like takes some time, thinks about why he's doing this, and he finds the strength to continue on.
Yeah.
And this is where you see he can see the base in the distance, so he's made it. And at the same time, I think you see John's reaction. He's like kind of still out of it because he's very heavily concussed. He's losing blood and stuff like that. So, but he's not really all there, John.
Yeah.
And
All I
so
wanted to say
right
about
before,
this part we just had, because obviously it's a long part of the movie, but just again, Dar Salim does it amazing. You really see like the man versus man versus nature. Like the stuff they talked about in like seventh grade English class. You know what I mean, like the basic conflicts: man versus nature, man versus society. You see all of it. All right, here you see, and then as you're just going through, and he just does a phenomenal job. And Jake Gyllenhaal plays a great injured person, but like this is Dar Salim of just like going forward, doing amazing here.
the easiest shooting days for Jake Gyllenhaal. Oh, there's real quick right before we get to this ending. At one point when they did have the car, he has Jake Gyllenhaal wrapped in a rug in the back of the truck, and they get stopped by some Taliban scouts, and he's like real nervous. He puts the scarf up over his face, and they just say, our car broke down. Can you drive us, this far or whatever?
Yeah.
And so one guy gets in the passenger seat of the truck, and then the other three get into the back, where the rugs are, and you're like, holy shit! Like you're bringing this like, but luckily they don't, they don't recognize, they don't see John in the back, and they don't know what Ahmed looks like, right? They know they're looking for two American soldiers, but they don't know what they look like. And so, that was an interesting exchange between Ahmed and the Taliban. Yeah. But anyway, so like he realized that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say Ahmed has ice in his veins, man. That's what literally I just wrote in my notes. I was like, ice in that motherfucker's veins, because like the 2 or 3 times he just like bluffs his way past Taliban. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, ice in his veins. That's all I gotta say.
So. He reaches the top of the mountain, and he sees that the base isn't far. He can see the base is pretty close. So he comes, I guess, towards the bottom of the mountain. He stops at this like little this stand that's selling like fruits and water and stuff like that, because he's obviously thirsty. So he asks for water, gets the water, gives some to John. Takes some himself. And I think right as he's about to leave, you see a truck with 3 Taliban soldiers in it. And they get out, ask for water from the vendor or whatever. And as they're standing there, one of the soldiers, so there's one at the vendor, buying stuff. There's one standing near the cart with John in it, and there's another guy in the truck. And the guy recognizes... he sees John's boots and like hanging out the edge of the door. And this is what I was saying. It was just like, has he not like It's not like John's walking. He doesn't need the boots. Like, but anyway,
Yeah.
he recognizes John's boots, and then he removes like the cover of his face and notices that he's an American. And immediately, Ahmed jumps into action. So he shoots that guy.
Yep.
He shoots the guy who discovered John. He shoots the guy that's at the vendor. No, sorry. He shoots the guy that's in the truck. And then the guy that was at the vendor like goes to attack him, and then he has to. I think he ran out of bullets, so he has to kill him with his bare hands.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he's done that, some American soldiers come up and tell him to get on the ground, and then they recognize that John is in the because he's Ahmed says, "I have one of yours."
Yep. Yeah.
And they recognize that it's John Kinley. So they immediately like get John, to a hospital. So I think it jumps to 4 weeks later,
Yeah.
or something like
he
that.
feels- Yeah.
Yeah, John wakes up in a hospital in L.A., and then 3 weeks after that, he's back home, and I think Declan stops by or something like that. The guy from that who would give me intel in the beginning, and he's basically saying that because John really doesn't remember anything about the journey, right? The last thing he could possibly remember is being at the house before he got shot and attacked. So I think you see he gets flashes of the journey, but it really doesn't. He can't really piece anything together. So he ended up getting a medal as well, but he was like, it should have gone to Ahmed because I didn't do anything, type of thing.
Yeah. It wasn't me.
And
Climbing across everything. Yeah.
yeah, so you see and this is like this. So they have a conversation about how Ahmed became a local hero because he saved John and took down those 3 Taliban guys, and now there's a bounty on his head from the Taliban. And John is confused because he was like, we promised him and his family visas to protect them. Why isn't it going through? And like Declan's like, the whole system or whatever. So John, it starts at day 1, and where he's calling like every day trying to get these visas, but he was just like, no, I don't know the baby's name, or like, why does that matter? We need to get these people out of there. No, they don't have time. And I think it starts from day 1 and it goes to like day 39, where he's just constantly frustrated. He's like having sleepless nights, and then during the nights he's having sort of flashbacks of what happened in the desert.
Yeah.
And this is where I think you get the first monologue with him laying in bed.
I am the man who cannot sleep, who cannot rest. And I'm just like, what?
I am the one who knocks.
Yeah, and like with that, I was like, just because it was like he was like cussing people out on the phone, which I get, and like even that was a little bit. But then he was like sitting there, and like you see him like use so much soldier rhetoric and talk, and then all of a sudden he's just like, I'm the man who rests but cannot rest, and I'm like, all right, you're kind of losing me a little bit here.
Clearly, his theater troupe is doing Macbeth.
Yeah,
or something.
exactly. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, and that was the thing. It's like I am hooked, and I was like, okay, like for the most part, again, well acted, but yeah, some of the monologues here, I was like,
I guess I can agree with that, but I think it's one of those things where, like, because he's Jake Gyllenhaal, I do want to see him do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I do want that. But anyway, so it's just like it's literally plaguing him. Like you said, he can't sleep because of the fact that he owes this man his life, and he may lose his because of the fact that the U.S. military is failing him.
Yeah.
And so his wife kind of talks with him and says, kind of gives him the okay because she can tell that he feels that he owes this man a debt that he can't pay back, and because of that, he can't sleep. He can't eat. Like it's going to plague him until he's able to repay Ahmed for what he did. And even she says like this family owes him. It's not just John because of the fact that I think it goes to talking about military families, and it was just like it's not the men and women in the military that suffer. It is the people who love them as well.
Yeah.
And so she kind of gives him the okay, say they'll do a second mortgage on the house or something like that to get the money to pay.
Mortgage works is they'll do a cash out refinance of the house. So
Is that
equity.
this movie? You're just searching scripts for mortgage terms or for real estate terms.
We only do these movies from now on. I'll explain the process.
It was weird. The bad guy script had something about a second lien or something like that. So we had
they got a lien on the property. I can talk about liens on property. Lord.
And so so she agrees to they agrees to get him the money because they know a guy.
Mhm.
Declan knows a guy in Afghanistan named Parker
Yeah.
that can he's like a private mercenary or contractor that can
Hmm.
help him find Ahmed and get his family out of there.
Yeah.
Because John at some points decides, and this is in the trailers, he was just like, I guess I got to go in and get him myself. But obviously he can't do it himself because the U.S. military isn't going to let him back. So this is where you get his wife saying that they're going to get the money to pay Parker.
Hmm.
I think it's like 150,000 or
Yep.
something like
Yeah,
that.
150 grand
Um,
to help out.
yeah, so they get the money, and then Declan is like, it doesn't matter if you find him if we don't get those visas. So then
Mhm.
he goes to the colonel, and this is I think another intense scene
This
with
one was a
a
little
great
better
acting.
though, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm But like he says he's frustrated and stuff like that. I think he thinks that the colonel's gonna chastise him because they have recordings of every exchange he's had with the U.S. government on the phones trying to get the visas, and the last one where he's like drunk and
Mhm.
frustrated and he's threatening the customer service person.
It's just some poor young
Um,
private. He's like, "I will bash your
yeah.
brains in." I was like, "All right, that's a little excessive."
But and then he says he was like basically the colonel you owe me like, and
Mhm.
this is where you get like John saved the colonel from
Something.
I guess they had been ambushed as well or something like that, and he saved the colonel, so that's why he got the position that he got and all these different things. So it was just like you owe me. I need you to get those visas.
Hmm.
So now they head to Parker, and on his way he finds out that the colonel has gotten the visas. Now he just needs to find Ahmed and his family, get him out of there. At the same time, you do see that Ahmed has gone into hiding. Um, and I think there was a great scene there where just like the Taliban they're raiding some little a village, and a guy is sitting out, in the square, and he calls Ahmed and
Hmm.
says, the Taliban is here, they're looking for you. And so there's an intense scene where like they're searching house to house. They've killed some poor man in the square
Hmm.
because he doesn't he won't give up the location. And so one guy comes into the back door of where Ahmed's hiding. He has to take him out silently and then get his family out. And so they have to move once again. So that they're showing the intensity, and it was like they're running out of time because there's a bounty on Ahmed's head. The Taliban doesn't like the legend that
Hmm.
has become of Ahmed for him, going up against them. And so John gets to Afghanistan under a fake name because obviously the U.S. military is searching for him because they know if John Kinley's back in Afghanistan, it's only for one reason.
Hmm.
And so he goes to Parker, and Parker says, it's just bad timing. We got another contract.
Well, they had like
Some
their
dignitary.
agreed, yeah, they had like their agreed set upon like this were the dates we're going to do it. But then Parker's like, "Yo, something came from the higher ups. We need to do this, and then we'll be able to do your thing now in 3 days versus right now,
Yeah.
like we agreed."
Mm.
Yeah, which honestly,
And
72 hours. Just throwing that out there. Yeah, it's.
yeah. It's up in the air. What would you do? But it was just like you can. Parker said you can go on. I will give you the supplies and the contacts.
Hmm.
You can go alone, or you could just wait 3 days.
Yeah.
But John is saying like, oh, hey, they don't have 3 days, so he gets weapons and a car and a contact who is Ahmed's brother,
Hmm.
who works in the drug game, and he actually does dealings with the Taliban. That is the only reason he's still alive for the
Yeah.
most part. Um, and so John goes out alone. He meets with Ahmed's brother, who gives him the location, but he says, "Oh, you can't take your truck. They're gonna
Hmm.
see you coming." And so they put him in this. I guess it's like a U-Haul, the equivalent of a U-Haul in
Yeah. Like the brother had
Afghanistan.
like his own guys who can like go and have trucks that can go and like transport around. So then the brother gives John, one of his trucks with a driver to then drive them through some of the
Mhm.
Taliban checkpoints because he has the papers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so so now John is headed towards um, Ahmed's location,
Hmm.
and Parker told him right before he left, he was like, "Here's a sat phone. You tell us, once you find him." Because he told him the location. He was like, "All right, so here's the extraction point. You
Yeah.
just let us know, and we'll be there." And so he's headed to get Ahmed and his family. They get stopped once, and the driver is able to kind of use his kind of bribe them to let him go. But then they get stopped a second time, and I think maybe they have more intel this time or something like that. And the
I think he
Taliban are
was just
very much.
overzealous. Yeah, like, it was like because the first Taliban guy was like, "Cool, here's the paper." It was like a regular checkpoint, go for it. The other time he was like, "I don't care." He's like, "Let me see," and I was like, "You're a dick." Yeah, that guy.
But so yeah, the second checkpoint, the soldiers are a little bit more pushy. They want to check the back of the truck, and then they start threatening the driver. And this is when John takes out both the two of the soldiers, and they they hide the bodies. But there's another truck that was there, where a guy sees them kill the two soldiers,
Yeah.
and he calls up the higher ups in the Taliban, and he's like, it's a little suspicious. So now they're being followed. John and the driver are being followed.
Sorry, it's a little. Hey, this guy just killed two of our guys. This is a little suspicious. It's just, you.
I'm not gonna raise an alarm.
I'm like, I don't
Just
want
want to let you know. I'm not superstitious, little stitches.
little
though.
stitch,
Little
just
stitches.
a bit. Yeah.
And so they drive, and I think I appreciated this next part, but it was just like they drive to the village that Ahmed is in, obviously being followed by a Taliban scout, and John sees Ahmed, and he says, "Do you remember the line he uses
A lot of dogs around
about?"
here.
Yeah, which is something I called back to earlier. And I think what I was saying, I like this part. It was just like they didn't, because I thought it was going to be like a man on fire, or like him searching, throughout Afghanistan for Ahmed or something like that. But they really got right to the point.
Yeah.
I think because the biggest part was that trek through the desert. They didn't need to really draw it out with him finding Ahmed and his family.
Yeah.
So like there's a nice exchange and a cool exchange between Ahmed and John, where it's just like he kind of surprised that he's there. But he was like, you know why I'm here. You
Yeah.
saved my life. I'm going to save yours. I have the visas for your family. We have a truck. I'm going to get you out of here right now. And so Ahmed takes John to meet his wife, and I think their newborn son, right?
Yeah. And well, he's like 2 or 3 months old now, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sorry, not newborn, but yeah.
Yeah.
She, he tells her that this is John, and that he's here to take us to America, and you just see that relief flood over her because it's over. Obviously, she's been in the same hell that Ahmed has been in this whole time.
Yeah.
And so they immediately leave, but at the same time, the scout recognizes. He takes pictures of both Ahmed and John and says, "Oh, that's John Kinley."
Yeah.
So that must be Ahmed. And so, like, the higher-ups from the Taliban was like, "Oh, we're sending a bunch of men there." So it's like, once again, now you're on the clock. They don't know, but the audience does.
Yeah.
And so they drive. Oh, it's also because of the fact that they have a spy in the city. That's what it was. And so they load up into the U-Haul or whatever, the family and John and the driver, and they drive off to go to the extraction point. He has already called Parker. And so that they're on their way, and then right as they leave the city, the Taliban backups come as well. So like now there's a chase. I think you get this quick scene of Parker. They had looked up John's name and find out that his name is not Ron whatever.
Yeah.
They had met him as he's actually John Kinley. So like they call in. We need the big guns because he's on the Taliban's most wanted list or whatever. John and Ahmed, realizing that they're being chased, they shoot at the Taliban soldiers. And then once again, back into these action scenes, it was like there are stakes here. Now it's not just John and Ahmed who are soldiers. You have the innocent truck driver who's just helping out. You have the wife and the kid. So it's just like there's so many.
You have the innocent heroin smuggler. Just throwing that out there.
Wow. I don't know what's in the back of this truck. Okay, I'm just getting it from point A to point B, baby.
No, just throwing that out there. Yeah, but yes. But no, now like Ahmed's wife and child are in it too.
How American of you to point out the actual truth. How dare you?
Someone's got to do it. Yeah.
But anyway, so like now they're being chased by the Taliban. So like they shoot out some tires and take out some of the trucks, some of the trucks that are following them, and then they get to this underpass to a bridge.
Yeah.
And so John says, park the truck, kind of blocking so they can block the way for the so that other trucks can't follow them. And then he puts a grenade under the gas tank of the truck. It explodes, and now you see that they can't. It's gonna obstruct them from driving
Yeah.
like through, past the bridge. So like John and Ahmed and his the family they hold up on the bridge. I think he gives the driver a gun so he can help out. And now they're just waiting for Parker to kind of show up. And this is intense because of the fact that eventually the Taliban soldiers are able to move the truck. So like now they're kind of swarming the bridge as well, and they're running out of ammo. And they have another slow motion, as I told you after the movie. I was like, I hate Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder did this shit, the slow motion. It was like the all is lost moment.
Lost moment, and it's a great shot. It is a great shot of Jake Gyllenhaal just like looking deadpan straight ahead of like, I have failed, I have caused Ahmed and his wife and child to now die, while like bullets and everything are whizzing over. Him and Ahmed look at each other, and it's like, for the record, Ahmed's like, "Hey man, you tried." He was like, "You tried your best."
Yeah.
I get it, but like everyone's like, and Ahmed's wife is like, "Oh god, I'm gonna die," but like everyone's just okay. All hope is lost, while like the debris, the debris, if you will, floats around them. Yeah.
But in comes Parker in this one of this plane that is just like firing at all of the Taliban soldiers in the mountains and on the bridge. So he takes them. They take them all out, and then once that's clear, Parker is on the other side of the bridge with trucks. They get a medic for the driver who had been shot. And then they get them on a chopper and they immediately get them out of there. And then you see that they have the visas for them, so they're officially going to America. And then you kind of have that exchange. That I think the ending shot is John and Ahmed sitting across from one another, and it was just like, I think John can finally like rest because of the fact that he's paid his debt to the man who saved his life.
Yeah.
And then it pans off again, and you get more text. And I think this text was important as well because it was just saying that during our America's time in Afghanistan, about 300 interpreters were killed by the Taliban because they were working with the United States government, and then over 1,000 more are still in hiding.
Weird. So that was not over the time. So they weren't kind of, because I'm sure honestly it might have been more. But yes, so August, I think it was August 2021 when America pulled out of Afghanistan. That's
Yes.
the only political thing is all the American troops pulled out of Afghanistan. So basically, Afghanistan didn't have any support from the U.S. at this point in time. So the Taliban, who the United States and other Afghan militias were fighting against, Taliban has now taken over Afghanistan again. And then in that time, all the interpreters, other employees, then other people that the Americans were using to help them in that, like, since the Taliban has taken over, there's at least 300 documented cases, according to the movie, 300 documented cases of interpreters and people that worked for the United States and Afghanistan at the time being killed, and thousands more in hiding because the Taliban wants to find them and potentially kill them. I don't know. There's been a lot of back and forth with the Taliban saying, no, we just want them so we can work with them, and people being like, no, they want us so they could kill them. I don't know enough to really comment besides that information. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you see a bunch of pictures of like soldiers and the interpreters or other soldiers that they were working with from Afghanistan. And then you see covenant, and the definition of covenant is a bond, a pledge, or a commitment.
Yeah.
And I thought, and then, end credits.
End credits, which that was a pretty good way of just, it's. So yeah, so at the end of every movie, we always like to revisit our original reviews at the beginning and see if they changed. So Mike, your 0 to 5, did it change?
Nope, 4 is solid. Like I said, the few qualms that I had about the some of the pacing with the slow-mo scenes and stuff like that were kind of unnecessary. But no, a really, really good movie. Yeah, Performances were great. Action set pieces were really good. It really moved along. Like I said, I really appreciated in that third act. It wasn't John just shooting his way through Afghanistan
Yeah.
looking for Ahmed. It was like, oh no, we know where he is. We're getting him out. Boom.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so yeah, a solid movie, solid 4.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna keep my 4 as well. Yeah, my only I agree with all the positives. I think that if you listen to this point, you would have heard a lot of positives, and I'm just gonna reiterate. My negative was that dialogue, and then looking at this, they kind of touch on it, and that's why I liked John when he was talking to the colonel. He's like, "You're a man that pays your debts. Pay your debt," and that was goes into the covenant, right? So like that definition of at the end there, they could have played that potentially a little bit better, and that might have been that elevation to 4.5. It was just, I think, the dialogues and playing into the idea of that covenant or that promise a little more to bring it up would make it that 4.5. But as a whole, yeah, very solid movie. Very happy I saw it. Gave it a 4 for sure. So yeah, so thank you so much for listening, everybody. We appreciate you. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and at 2meddlingkids. If you want to send us an email, we are 2meddlingkids@gmail.com. Mike, how can they reach out to you?
At Days from Legendary on Instagram.
Perfect. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I'm at EdHunt77. So again, this was a blast. I really liked this movie, especially because I figured a couple of the movies I haven't enjoyed quite as much, so this was a lot of fun. But either way, everybody, we will see you next week. Catch you soon.
Bye.